February 6th, 2014. Pluragrotta, Norway. The most famous underwater cave in Scandinavia, hidden beneath a frozen pond in the mountains of Rana, Nordland. A beautiful, deadly place known for its narrow passages, bone-chilling waters, and its cruel silence. 5 friends. All of them experienced technical divers. Among them were 34-year-old Johanna Nordblad and 40-year-old Mikko Pasi, names later tied to other rescue operations. They had traveled across Finland and Sweden, hauling gear and dry suits, oxygen tanks, and rebreathers to reach the icy edge of Pluragrotta. These weren't thrill seekers. They were seasoned adventurers, bonded by a passion for diving into the most hostile environments on Earth. The mission was clear: complete a traverse from Pluragrotta to another connected system, Steinuglaflaget, a 2.3-kilometer journey through one of the most complex underwater cave systems in Europe. The path had been mapped before, but never attempted in winter, and never with this level of depth and exposure. The 5 divers wanted to prove it could be done, to set a milestone in cave diving history. It would take roughly 5 hours, in theory. The water was colder than expected, just 2 degrees Celsius. Their gear, already stressed from the long trip, showed early signs of wear. One diver, who had dived Plura before, hesitated for a moment, remembering a narrow restriction past the halfway mark that had almost trapped him years ago. But no one voiced real concern. They were confident, experienced, overprepared, if anything. At 11 a.m., they entered the water. Roughly 2 hours into the dive, everything began to unravel. Diver Björn Rohr had stopped at the deepest point, 130 meters down, to switch tanks. In the confined space, one of his hoses got snagged. As he struggled to untangle it, his breathing rate spiked. The regulator didn't lock into place. Seconds passed, then panic. He thrashed, burned through his remaining oxygen, and blacked out before he could connect the backup. The others, seeing his motionless body, were forced to make an impossible decision: try to save him and risk their own lives in a place with zero visibility and no room to maneuver, or move on. They left him behind. The shock of losing a friend in total darkness shook the group, but they had to keep moving. Then came another horror. A body appeared in the passage ahead, a corpse floating silently in the tunnel. It was not Björn Rohr. This was someone else, a diver who had died years earlier and whose body had never been recovered. They had to push past him, inches from the pale mask and hollow eyes. Psychological pressure started to crack one of them. His breathing became too fast. He started to spiral into CO2 buildup. He collapsed. 2 deaths. Minutes apart, 3 remained. They pushed on, disoriented and fatigued. Then, the final insult. They reached the exit pond, but the surface above had frozen over. A solid sheet of ice now blocked their escape. With bare hands and nearly no oxygen, they scraped at the ice from underneath, teeth chattering, fingers numb, lungs begging for air. At the last possible moment, they broke through. They surfaced after 11 hours underwater, more than twice the intended duration. All 3 were rushed to medical care with extreme decompression sickness. Their bodies were damaged. Their minds were torn. But they were alive. But not all cave divers are so lucky. In Texas, there's a place that looks harmless, a shimmering blue hole surrounded by limestone. But just beneath the surface lies a series of narrow tunnels so tight, divers must remove their tanks to pass. And those who go in don't always come back. June 1983. Jacob's Well, Wimberley, Texas. A natural spring bubbling up from the depths of the earth, crystal clear, surrounded by sun-bleached limestone and summer heat. On the surface, it looks shallow, peaceful, harmless. It's not. Richard Patton and Clark Wiley, 2 university students, both in their early 20s, working toward their open water diving certification. Eager, curious, but still inexperienced in overhead environments. They had heard the rumors, whispers of hidden chambers and breathtaking underwater cathedrals. Jacob's Well had a reputation: beautiful, seductive, and dangerous. They weren't just there to swim. They wanted to explore the infamous 3rd chamber, a zone known for its tight squeeze and even tighter legends. Divers spoke of a 4th chamber beyond it, accessible only if you removed your tank, crawled, and didn't panic. A place few reached, even fewer returned from. The entrance was deceptively welcoming, and was a wide, vertical shaft of clear water dropping straight down. They descended with ease, marveling at the light filtering from above. But once they passed the 2nd chamber, the walls began to close in. The visibility dimmed. Richard was the first to hesitate. The passage narrowed into a tunnel no wider than a torso, but they pushed on. Reaching the 3rd chamber, they spotted the hole that led deeper. Richard took off his tank and held it out in front of him, a technique known but extremely dangerous. Clark followed. But halfway through, Richard dropped his tank. It slipped into the tunnel ahead, unreachable in the narrow passage. Now he was trapped, unable to breathe. Clark saw panic in his friend's eyes. No regulator? No air? In a split-second decision, Clark offered Richard his own mouthpiece. They took turns breathing, passing the regulator back and forth. But time was slipping. Somehow, they managed to retreat into the third chamber again. It should have been the end of the crisis, but with adrenaline high and air low, they misread the way out. They turned into a false chimney, a dead-end tunnel that looked identical to the exit shaft. They were trapped. Their last tank clanged against the rock. The sound echoed like a death knell underwater. Their air was nearly gone. Clark made one final desperate decision. Swim toward the surface, 75 feet up in a single breath. He made it. Richard never surfaced. He drowned inside that tunnel, just seconds away from safety. When Clark reported what happened, the diver who arrived at the scene was Don Dibble, the same man who had nearly died in Jacob's Well 2 years earlier and who had tried to seal off the third chamber forever. He was the one who found Richard's body, a body curled inside a tight tunnel, arms extended as if still reaching for the light. But that wasn't the first tragedy, and it wouldn't be the last, because across the globe, beneath a different kind of surface, 9 divers prepared to enter a sinkhole unlike anything they'd seen before. A vertical shaft with a drop so steep, it looked like a portal into the Earth itself. May 28, 1973, Mount Gambier region, South Australia. A sunny morning greeted the 9 divers gathered at the edge of a deep, natural sinkhole known simply as the Shaft. From above, it looked like a tiny crack in the earth, but beneath, a submerged world of silence and pressure lit only by a single shaft of natural light. The group included some of Australia's most promising young divers, enthusiastic, ambitious, and mostly trained in open water conditions. Among them were 4 men determined to push deeper than anyone else had attempted that day. Their names were lost to time, but their decision would echo for decades. The initial plan was conservative. Stay within the illuminated chamber no deeper than 200 feet. It was supposed to be a recreational dive, a test of teamwork and courage. But temptation ran deep. The western section of the cave beckoned with mystery, an unexplored zone beyond the light, a place where sunlight vanished and only risk remained. Their tanks were filled with standard air, not the safer mixed gas blends used today, and they weren't seasoned cave divers. Still, they descended. A few noticed early signs of nitrogen narcosis, a dizzying sensation like being drunk underwater. One diver, sensing danger, turned back, but 4 continued. As they descended past 240 feet, they kicked up thick clouds of silt from the untouched cave floor. The once clear water turned black in seconds. Visibility dropped to 0. They couldn't see their hands, couldn't see each other, couldn't see a way out. They began to panic. Narcosis worsened. Judgment slowed. Reaction times faded. In their confusion, they likely swam in circles, thinking they were ascending when they were moving sideways. The cave twisted around them, a cold, silent maze. Above the surface, the rest of the team waited. Time passed, then more time. They realized something was wrong. A few divers re-entered the water in a desperate search. What they found was a floating flashlight and a camera. No divers. All 4 had drowned. Their bodies were only recovered after a long and dangerous recovery operation. The footage in the camera, waterlogged, blurred, showed moments of awe and moments of confusion. It ended abruptly. Australia mourned the worst cave diving accident in its history. The shaft was sealed for years afterward. It became a symbol of both wonder and warning, a place where dreams of discovery gave way to the reality of death. But the earth does not weep for the fallen. In the north of England, rain clouds gathered, and deep beneath the hills of Yorkshire, 10 explorers would soon enter a labyrinth with no way out. June 24th, 1967, Yorkshire Dales, England. Hidden beneath a patch of rolling hills and scattered sheep, a narrow slit in the ground opened into one of the most claustrophobic and feared cave systems in Britain, Mossdale Cavern. Twisting, tight, and flood-prone, a death trap disguised as limestone beauty. 10 young cavers, all skilled, all passionate, many in their 20s. Led by 2 experienced explorers who had previously mapped sections of the cave, the group set out that morning with a simple goal: go deeper than anyone had before. They wanted to chart a section of the system known as Far Marathon Passage. It was rumored to be vast and unexplored. The expedition wasn't just about thrill, it was about making history in the world of British caving. As they crawled through the mud-slicked tunnels, 4 members, sensing just how narrow, wet, and unstable the system was, turned back early. When they exited, they noticed something subtle but ominous. The sky had darkened. Clouds gathered over the dales, but they assumed the others would be out before any rain became dangerous. They were wrong. 6 cavers remained underground. They had reached Far Marathon Passage, a tunnel barely 18 inches high, half filled with water. They pressed on, unaware that rain had begun falling heavily above. And in a place like Mossdale, even distant rainfall can mean death. Outside, a shallow lake was forming around the cave entrance. Water surged downward. The surface team realized too late. A flash flood was pouring into the cave. Rescuers were called. Pumps, shovels, and hundreds of volunteers arrived. But inside the cave, it was already too late. Water rose rapidly, flooding every passage. The 6 cavers tried to retreat, but the return journey took 3 hours in dry conditions. And now they were swimming against a current in pitch black, soaked, freezing, disoriented. There was no way out. All 6 drowned. Their bodies were found days later, huddled together in a small air pocket near the tunnel's end, where they had tried to wait, hoping for rescue that never came. Their names: John Ogden, Christopher Fox, Jeffrey Workman, Philip Rhodes, David Adamson, and Michael Ryan, are now engraved on a stone near the cave's entrance. These caves aren't just places on a map, they are thresholds, portals into the unknown, where physics behaves differently, where fear becomes tangible, and where even the most prepared humans are humbled. Some entered chasing glory, others just wanted to explore, but all of them were changed, or lost, forever. Every narrow tunnel, every failed breath, every echo in the darkness is a reminder that nature doesn't forgive mistakes, and the earth still holds secrets darker than anything we've imagined. If you want to uncover more stories the world was never meant to know, hit subscribe, because next time, we go even deeper.